Let's recap and review the Alabasta Saga, starting with the Reverse Mountain Arc. The Straw Hat crew officially enters the Grand Line through the perilous Reverse Mountain, a massive mountain where water flows uphill on four sides and down the center. Navigating it requires both luck and skill. During their wild ascent and descent, they crash into a giant whale called Laboon, who repeatedly slams into the mountain's wall. The crew meets Crocus, the lighthouse keeper and former ship doctor of the Roger Pirates. He explains that Laboon is waiting for a group of pirates who promised to return decades ago, a heartbreaking tale of loyalty and grief which pays off way later in a few sagas. Luffy, moved by Laboon's devotion, challenges the whale to a duel and then promises they'll return to fight again, giving Laboon a reason to stop hurting himself. This arc also includes log poses, specialized compasses needed to navigate the Grand Line's unpredictable magnetic fields. The crew receives their log pose and prepares to journey into the unknown. Though short, this arc is surprisingly emotional. Laboon's story reflects One Piece's reoccurring theme of waiting and loyalty, and Luffy's response to it is both great and moving, literally painting the Straw Hat on Laboon. It's also an important logistical setup arc, introducing how the Grand Line works and hinting at Gold D. Rogers' legacy through Crocus. It's a solid 7.5, short-ass arc. Whiskey Peak Arc. The crew's first official stop on the Grand Line is Whiskey Peak, a town that seemingly worships pirates. The villagers throw the crew a huge welcome party, but it's a trap. The entire town, made up of Baroque Works agents, a secret criminal organization trying to eliminate the Straw Hats for a bounty. Luffy passes out from partying too hard, but Zoro suspects foul play, single-handedly defeating off dozens of bounty hunters. Then, in a twist, Nami and Luffy fight Zoro, misunderstanding the situation. It's mainly Luffy, which leads to a very amusing moment from Zoro. Early One Piece has a lot of great humor, and this is a prime example. But more importantly, this arc introduces Miss Wednesday and Mr. Nine, who are revealed to be Princess Vivi of Alabasta, working undercover. Vivi begs the crew to help her return home and stop the true leader of Baroque Works, Sir Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, who is manipulating her country into a civil war. The Straw Hats agree to escort her, setting the main plot of the saga into motion. The arc is fast-paced, funny, and pivotal enough for me not to have a huge issue with it overall. Zoro shines in combat, and as a fan of Vivi, I love seeing her as Wednesday. The introduction blends comedy and gravitas well, and as I said, solid humor throughout this arc. So let's say 7. Yeah, 7 works. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Little Garden Arc. The Straw Hats land on Little Garden, a prehistoric island filled with dinosaurs and strange wildlife. There they encounter the 2 giant warriors, Dory and Broggy, who become way more important down the line, so start paying attention. They have been dueling for over 100 years due to a forgotten disagreement. Despite the ridiculous reason for their fight, they respect each other deeply. The crew splits up to explore and gather supplies. Meanwhile, Baroque Works agent Mr. 3 and Miss Golden Week arrive, planning to capture the giants and Straw Hats. Mr. 3 creates an elaborate plan using his wax fruit to encase the giants, and eventually Zoro, Nami, and Vivi in unbreakable wax statues. By the way, I know I talked about how early One Piece humor being great, but this is a great example, and a favorite Zoro moment for me. When he's getting encased in wax, he's like, yeah, if I'm gonna die a statue, I'm gonna have a cool-ass pose. It's hilarious, I love it. Luffy, enraged by the trickery, defeats Mr. 3 and saves his friends. Usopp's dream of becoming a brave warrior of the sea is touched when he's inspired by the giants' pride and strength. At the end, the Straw Hats help the giants finally part as friends and continue their quest to Alabasta. This is just a solid arc with some amusing moments. I miss when little arcs like this existed and didn't really overstay their welcome. So again, another solid 7. Now let's get into a top 5 One Piece arc for me. The Drum Island Arc. After a chaotic escape from Little Garden, Nami falls gravely ill with a high fever, and the crew is desperate to find medical help. Guided by the log post, they land on Drum Island, a wintry country that used to be ruled by the despicable King Wapol, who had banned all but a select group of doctors, keeping medical knowledge and power tightly under his control. Upon arrival, the Straw Hats face resistance from the locals, who were wary of pirates. Luffy proves his good intentions by protecting the villagers from a hungry giant rabbit. It's cool. And they learn that there's only one doctor left, the eccentric and reclusive Dr. Kureha, who lives atop a steep mountain accessible only by scaling sheer cliffs. Luffy, carrying the unconscious Nami on his back, he's a fucking unit, and Sanji, injured in a fall, begin a grueling climb through the blizzard. At the summit, they are rescued by Tony Chopper, a talking blue-nosed reindeer. Chopper is a reindeer who ate the human fruit, giving him intelligence, speech, and the ability to take human forms. Through physically tough, Chopper has been emotionally scarred by years of rejection from both reindeer and humans. He was once cared for by Dr. Hiruluk, an eccentric quack doctor who believed that a person's heart could be cured just as surely as their body. Hiruluk's death left a deep impact on Chopper. In one of the most tragic flashbacks in the series, Chopper mistakenly poisons Hiruluk with a cure in a desperate attempt to save him. Not realizing that Hiruluk was already dying, Hiruluk, aware of the mistake, smiles warmly and tells Chopper his death is a victory. A person only dies when they are forgotten. This backstory is it's so beautiful. Early Chopper is such a great character. I miss him so much. And the final moment in Hiruluk's final line makes me smile with such sadness. I know that makes no sense, but stick with me. Chopper was then taken by Dr. Kureha, who taught him real medicine and gave him a second chance, but he still sees himself as a monster. Meanwhile, Wapol returns to reclaim his throne, now backed up by his Munch fruit powers, which allow him to consume and merge with anything, including people and buildings. He attacks Drum Castle, aiming to punish Kureha and Chopper for defying him. When Wapol insults Hiruluk's memory and threatens Kureha, Chopper finally snaps. Empowered by his respect for his late father figure and by Luffy's support, he unleashes his monster point form and fights Wapol's men. Luffy defeats Wapol, sending him flying out of the country and permanently ending his tyranny. As the Straw Hats prepare to leave, Chopper initially refuses Luffy's offer to join out of fear he'll be rejected again. But Luffy and Usopp literally chase him around the castle yelling for him to join, and Dr. Kureha proudly watches as her surrogate son sails off to a new future. The Drum Island arc is one of my favorite arcs in One Piece. It's One Piece's most emotional, powerful, and character-driven arcs, and it's easily one of my favorites. The backstory, the mountain climb, Luffy protecting the flag, Chopper watching Kureha's fireworks and crying as she launches Hiruluk's cherry blossoms into the sky. It all blends together to hit you with just the right emotional spots. There's only one problem with this arc, and it's the villain is kind of ass. If he was even semi-serviceable and not forgettable and worthless, this might be my favorite arc in the series. I'm not exaggerating at all. It's not about politics or war, but about healing of body and soul and identity. Chopper's arc is beautifully tragic and uplifting, full of themes about acceptance, sacrifice, and the idea that true strength comes from being vulnerable. Luffy's actions once again show his deep compassion. He doesn't ask Chopper about his past or power level. He simply sees someone hurting and says, "Join my crew." That being said, with all its flaws and all, this is still a top 5 One Piece for arc for me. It's a very solid 10 out of 10. And now let's get to the namesake of this saga, the Alabasta Arc. The crew finally arrives at the desert kingdom of Alabasta in the midst of a crisis. The country is locked in a growing civil war, with the people accusing King Cobra of hoarding resources and oppressing them. Vivi, the princess of Alabasta, knows the real mastermind is Crocodile, the leader of a crime syndicate, Baroque Works, and one of the 7 warlords of the sea. He has manipulated both sides by staging attacks, faking rebel activity, and disrupting the kingdom's dance powder supply, which is a substance that causes rain in one area but drains it from the others, creating a devastating drought. The Straw Hats are now fugitives hunted by Baroque Works and Marine forces led by Captain Smoker. They travel across Alabasta, meeting key figures: Pel and Shaka, loyal guardians of the king; Koza, Vivi's childhood friend and leader of the rebellion; Lash, the loyal camel; and Toto, an amazing old man whose belief in the king's mind mirrors the fading hope of the people. We also meet 2 very important characters. Luffy's brother Ace, who's stopped by fighting Smoker with his flame fruit, explains that he's part of the Whitebeard pirates and on the hunt for a pirate known as Blackbeard. Ace is an angel with a fantastic intro, and later in the arc when he thanks the crew for taking care of Luffy just brings a huge smile to my face. And of course, Miss Sunday herself, Nico Robin, the only person who could read the poneglyphs. And I adore Robin, but we'll chat about her later. Baroque Works' top agents numbered 1 through 4, and their female partners begin launching assaults. Each Straw Hat faces their toughest battle yet. Zoro versus Mr. One, a brutal swordsman who can turn his body into steel. Zoro learns to cut steel for the first time in this fight. Nami versus Miss Doublefinger, a spiky assassin who pushes Nami to use her climb attack, showing her growth as both a fighter and navigator. Usopp and Chopper versus Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas, a chaotic underground battle filled with trickery and teamwork. Sanji versus Mr. 2, Bon Clay, a flamboyant martial artist who can copy anyone's face. Their fight is filled with both comedy and heart, and of course the main fight, Luffy versus Crocodile. Luffy fights Crocodile 3 separate times, losing the first two to Crocodile's Sand Fruit makes him nearly untouchable by Luffy, as he stabs Luffy through the chest in their first duel, one of the most iconic panels in the series. The final battle takes place in Alumbara, the capital. Vivi races to stop the rebel army, but the fighting breaks out anyway. The Straw Hats split face off against agents while Luffy confronts Crocodile underground in the tomb of the Poneglyph. An ancient tablet supposedly holds the secret to Platoon, one of the 3 ancient weapons, only being able to be read by Robin. In their final clash, Luffy overcomes Crocodile's Logia invulnerability by using water, also known as Water Luffy form, and blood also, to solidify him and lands a devastating Gomu Gomu no Storm that blasts Crocodile through bedrock. He's defeated and later arrested by Smoker, with the world government lying and crediting the Marines for the victory, which doesn't really sit well with Smoker, but that comes back later. Afterwards, Vivi chooses not to join the crew, realizing her duty is to help rebuild her country. At the port, she delivers a tearful speech over the Den Den Mushi, asking if they're still friends. The Straw Hats don't answer though, because that would mark them as allies of the rogue princess, but instead raise their arms, revealing the X tattoo on each of their wrists, for a silent symbol of eternal friendship. Meanwhile, Robin stows away on the Going Merry, injured but intrigued by Luffy's actions. Luffy lets her join without hesitation, of course, because he's Luffy. The Alabasta Arc is One Piece at its most epic and emotional up to this point. It's the first arc that spans dozens and dozens of chapters, being easily the longest arc to date, incorporating complex politics and ties in ancient history, military strategy, and philosophy of leadership. Vivi is a brilliant non-Straw Hat protagonist and a fan favorite of many. Her commitment to her people, her moral clarity, and her inner conflict make her unforgettable, and the characters introduced in this arc that eventually become important are crazy in hindsight, like Ace and Robin. Crocodile is the first truly terrifying and brilliant villain, both intelligent and arrogant. Oda has said that Crocodile came too early, and I totally agree. He's one of my favorite One Piece villains, and that's a generally shared opinion by most. He nearly kills Luffy multiple times in one of the most iconic panels in the manga, and controls an entire country like a chessboard. His defeat is not just physical, but ideological. Every Straw Hat has a moment to triumph, but Luffy's evolution from losing to Crocodile, which he really didn't do in the past, this is his first big loss. He nearly dies, and then he gets back up again. It's symbolic of the series' heart. The saga is truly something special. I genuinely think this is a top 3 saga in the series of One Piece, at least so far. And while I personally enjoyed Drum Island more than Alabasta, I cannot deny that this is the same ballpark in terms of quality. So I have to give Alabasta a 10 out of 10. Next, we're talking about the Lightning Boy.